So thank you everyone for joining us. This is Mukesh from Head Start team, and I welcome to everyone to this panel discussion, which we'll be hosting as part of our Rural India Solutions for the Energy, which is being conducted by AIC JKLU. And we hope to have very dynamic and energetic conversation during this panel discussion. So we have four prominent speakers with us. Anisa will be joining shortly, and also Arihant will be moderating the session. I request Arihant to take over the session and introduce formally all the speakers as well as then take the session forward. Thank you once again.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mukesh, for organizing all of this and having all of us here on one platform. First of all, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to the webinar and the panel discussions which we are going to have today. So the topic which we have chosen is the founder's journey in building impactful and sustainable ventures for rural India. The idea behind this panel discussion is that can we come up with some ideas or some roadmap for new upcoming startups, that how and what are the things they should consider before getting into the rural market and building something for rural market specifically. So let's hope we will come up with some good insights during the session. Just giving a little bit of context here, that why this sector is something which we feel is very important for everyone and we all should kind of work towards this. So some of you would have noticed that recently World Health Organization WHO has described that India's rural conditions are worrying right now, and that is largely due to the health infrastructure which we have currently with us. So they made a statement saying that we need to think urgently about the approach in rural areas in an interview for India Today TV. And somewhere connected to this, our government of India has also provisioned almost around rupees 30,000 crores under the National Rural Health Mission, under which almost 11,000 crores will be used for strengthening the health system, focusing some of the key states, including Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Uttar Pradesh, and Jharkhand. So, but recently during this pandemic, which we have seen and which we are still seeing for last 1.5 years and more, it has completely havoc the whole world community, and it was really a turning point for a lot of health infrastructure, not just in India, in many other countries also. And India faced a lot of challenge to its rural healthcare area also. And we learned a lot of things that we really don't have that much capacity to kind of sustain it. So what can be done? A lot of things have gone in last 2 years, but still we need a lot more sustainable energy efficient systems and adaptive devices which can help strengthen this area. So we will try to bring our discussion around some of these areas, and let me first introduce everyone who is there with us as part of this panel. So firstly, we have Dr. Subhash Narayan, who is the founder and CEO of SASCAN Meditech Private Limited. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but I read it on your
Yes, yes,
website
yeah.
that SAS represents SARS and CAN represent cancer.
Cancer, yeah.
So that's
SAMS,
the
yes.
focus we have. And so Dr. Subhash, with over 5 decades of research experience, he's a physicist by training and did his PhD in 1977, and has traversed through different disciplines such as laser technology, optoelectronics, atmospheric science, biophotonic, remote sensing, and biomedicines, which is very diverse areas. He's working in very close collaboration with clinicians, interviewing engineering with medicines to provide new insight and enhance the clinical experience to the benefit of society. He has also been honored with many awards, including Novartis Oration Award by ICMR, Rajiv Gandhi Excellence Award by IIFS, DAD Fellowship Award by GAES, Marie Curie Award by EU, and Regular Associate ICTP in Italy. He is also a member of SPI USA, India Laser Association, Optical Society of India, and Senior Fellow of Hendos UK. Welcome, Dr. Subhash, to this panel discussion. I hope we will learn a lot from your experience. Then we have Ms. Aarti Agrawal, who is the co-founder of NXZ Digital Runners. At NXZ, she's leading a team to do on-demand verification of people and property and data collection via 250,000 digital runners, feet on street, as we call it, across India, especially in tier 2, 3, 4 and towns and villages in 26 states of country. With the expertise of fingerprint, vein, and other biometric technologies, her area of specialization is biometric solution design and deployment. She has worked as biometric and identity management consultant to various organizations. She is an IEEE certified biometric professional and biometric domain expert. So welcome, Ms. Aarti, to the panel discussion. Uh, then we have Mr. Vamsi Udayagiri. He's the founder and CEO of HESA Technologies Private Limited. His area of expertise includes various things, including supply chain management, sales and customer management, enterprise creation, livelihood and skill development, rural marketing and promotions, stakeholder management, community development, and the list goes on. And he also have specific focus on agri-tech, fintech, and rural tech. In his 20 years of experience, he had ample opportunities to co-create solutions to solve the pain points which are there in India, be it agriculture, employment, education, entertainment, or healthcare. HESA is an amalgamation of the all experiences and connections. They make rural commerce viable. That's how they put it on their website also. So welcome, Vamsi, to the panel discussion. We will also have Ms. Hansa Vaswani joining us in a short while. She is an early stage impact investor who helps promising startups change their trajectories. Having over 14 years of experience in building and running scalable businesses, she has a proven record in startup environments and nurturing pledging teams of success. She has handled early stage investments at the World Food Program Innovation Accelerator at UN. And let me also mention, this was also the program which received Peace Award in 2020. So her focus area are livelihood improvement, emergency response, supply chain, nutrition, fintech, and agri-tech. So we'll welcome her also when she joins us. So before I start, let me just again talk a little bit about what we started the session with, that, rural India is facing a lot of challenges right now due to health and energy sources. Energy has been a challenge which has been there for a long time, and people acknowledge it also. But last 1.5 years has really affected the health sector also in the rural market, and that was also driven by the energy deficiencies and not availability of many of these things. And whenever we talk about these things, many times we focus on, we need to do more research, we need to do more understand better into the market, and a lot of these things which comes into picture. So Dr. Subhash, I would like to start with you. You have been a researcher and now become an entrepreneur. So how can you talk us through your journey and help us understand what is the value of research, and how does it play with the new initiatives and innovations which we want to see in our country? So, Dr. Subhash.
Okay, thank you for the nice introduction, Arihan, and nice to meet up with Aarti and Vamsi also. Good afternoon to everyone. So my journey has been, comprising maybe 30-40 years of research career, and I have been having. I started as a research student in Pune University, and then after graduation from there, I went to Cochin University to do further research on lasers and other things, and then I was employed in a company called Center for Earth Science Studies, actually in Trivandrum, where I was into basically developing devices for atmospheric research. Then I had this passion in me to see that something I should do for the environment and things like that. So I went into remote sensing field and then developed some instruments with our laser-based optical instruments for these kind of applications. Then I had the opportunity to visit Lund University in Sweden for a short visit. Now, while I was Marie Curie fellow in Italy, so I was exposed to other opportunities for remote sensing, like using it for screening of human tissues, for looking at cervical cancer, oral cancer, and for treatment also optic technology can be utilized very effectively. So I was fascinated by that and came back to India and applied for some grants from Department of Science and Technology. And then I slowly built up expertise in the field of it's a cross-disciplinary field rather, these kind of fields, biophotonics basically is a cross-disciplinary field in which electronics is there, spectroscopy is there. You have to interact with the clinicians, you have to interact with doctors and understand a lot of things in biology and medicine. So I had the opportunity of interacting with the doctors from regional cancer center at Bandram. So we had a couple of joint proposals, and I was mentoring PhD students also. So it was much easier to learn. So interact with the students and the doctor community and interact and learn the nuances of applying physical principles to develop devices and other things. And so we developed some devices which can be used under clinical conditions. Those days, the regulatory issues were not so severe like what we have today. So we didn't have any problem with the regulatory issues. Now, when we are developing a product for our company right now, all the regulatory issues have to be attended to. The drug controller's office is there. You have to get the permission from them. You have to have the company certified by ISO regulations and all this kind of stuff, to have a medical product. Those days it was not so. So I had a much easier time going for the clinical studies to do the things and then develop the basic technology needed for early detection of cancer. So when I superannuated from the Center for Excellence Studies, by that time I had some interaction with the industry also. I had some collaborative programs which were run through some industries. So I had some background information about how the industry is run. So, and I got a consultancy position in Forest Health in Bangalore. So I went there and as a consultant. So that also is a startup run by Dr. Shyam Vasudeva Rao. So he was a very good person to deal with. And so I interacted with him closely and he encouraged me to try for some funding. That time the BIRAC had a big opportunity, So I applied for some funding and got funded, and then slowly I got that project and we established a startup in Bangalore that time in DMS College of Engineering. The idea was to develop a small, compact intraoral camera for screening and detection of oral cancer. In India, the conventional method of screening was basically using a torchlight to look for abnormality and take the spectra. So that was leading to a lot of unwanted biopsies, false negatives and all. And so many people were having problems with that. And cancer being especially oral cancer being a disease of great concern in the country, with a lot of mortality rate, maybe nearly 50% of the people who are diagnosed with cancer die in the same year. That's the situation here. And more than 80,000 cases are detected each year. So that had a great, huge impact, especially in the rural population. So I wanted to see that the device is implemented in a rural setting. So I had to design the device in such a way that it should be adaptable to the rural setting. So we had to make it portable, easy to use, even without power connection, you can use it. And the device should be not a copy of anything that exists outside. So because I had done some research, basic fundamental research in that area, so I could develop something which is not at all a copycat of some device like the Wellscope or something like that available in the European market or the US markets. And so this we could take a patent and then we could develop into a portable device which could be used for screening of patients in the rural sector. So our idea is to have the system in various marketing channels like the pay-per-use model or the monthly lease model, so that they can be taken by the screening centers or maybe by the NGOs for large-scale mass screening of the population, so that people are benefited. So it was a long journey actually. Then fundraising was a major concern for us, in this time. You get the first funding, that is okay. So raise the next funding is most difficult thing for the startups, Follow-on funding. You have the employees, you have to pay their wages. We are in a tight spot actually to get that funding. So luckily for me, I got support from the Karnataka startup system, so we could raise, so under the Elevate grant, we could raise some around 20 lakhs to tide over the crisis. Then we went for pitching competitions and things like that. And then we were spotted by Willgrow, Willgrow, that Willgrow Innovations, they identified that we were winners of the Willgrow iFish contest in 2018. So they connected us to KIT TBI, Kalinga Institute of Technology. And they gave us the first seed funding. That's a great breakthrough for us. Seed funding is the most challenging thing. First seed funding, they gave us. So even though small money, it is 25 lakhs, that is good money. Under the Invent scheme, they had a company Invent by the DS. So we got the funding. That's a great thing to happen. So by the time I moved to Trivandrum also, because I'm basically from Trivandrum. So I moved to Trivandrum, and in Sritra Institute, they have a incubation facility specifically for medical technology devices. So our system suited well into that, and I had no problem getting incubated there. And they were very happy to accept me and Now also I am continuing in Sridhar only. Even though we are planning to move out of the place, we still want to have a seat at least there. The address with Sridhar has helped us a lot in coming up forward and getting the regulatory clearance and all. They are a big support system, in Sridhar. So leaving that aside, following that funding, Sridhar also gave us that funding also in the form of Nidhi SS scheme. This is cheap funding scheme is there. Under that also we got funded, seed funded, and we could evolve the product into a marketable product with those kind of funding, so that we could present it before the investors. Because investors, they look for regulatory approval for the product. All these need money, So we got ISO 13485 certified, and we had the DSCR recognition as R&D unit, and then we had the CE marking also done for the product. So with that, we approached the investors, and they were happy to fund us. Initial seed funding we got from around 2 crore we got raised, and then with that money only we could design or refine the product further to go into the market. These are the challenges most of the startups face, to raise the money at the right time to take the device to a marketable product, especially from medtech devices. As you all know, the gestation time is very high, actually around 4 to 5 years is needed for a hardware company to have a product in the market. So to tide over the crisis and come out successful is a big challenge, actually. So these are some of the points I want to emphasize, that those who are in this domain, they should not lose heart. They should go for these competitions, and they should go for the acceleration programs and try to win funds. And most of all, how to write a grant proposal, that also needs some kind of training also, how to write it properly to see the funding. These are all some of the challenges most of the startup people face, and especially youngsters. Because I came from a scientific background, so I was writing this kind of proposal. So it was much easier for me to raise the funds, and I had some publications to show. When people go with their ideas, bare ideas, nobody would accept. You have to substantiate with some published literature or something like that. If you have your own publications or something like a patent or something, nobody challenges you so much. So these are some of the things one has to take care of while getting into this kind of medtech hardware-based companies. Software companies are much simpler to manage. So because you need some coding to be done, you develop some platforms and something like that, and you can get the customers in. So if you have any specific questions on anything, Arihant, you can ask me.
So I will just start from one point which you mentioned, like, many of these companies coming in the field of meditech and also going into using the research route to come into existence need a lot of support in terms of the grants which they get from the various government bodies, or sometimes some corporates in the private sector research firms also. But as you also mentioned, like, it's not easy. It's not easy to get those grants. You need a lot of practice to how to write those proposals, and where to write, and who are the right agencies to write. So do you see that over the period of time, in your experience of last 5 decades and more, uh, we are seeing a upward trends towards government also putting in a lot of money into health sector, and at the same time something very specific to rural market? Do you see that upside coming now, or yeah?
Government is putting a lot of initiative to support the rural market for that, for sure. And they have various schemes to support that also. BIRAC, for that matter, they have Sparsh and other programs. They have PP scheme, and grant schemes by which one can get easily some products or programs into the rural market. So only thing is, as you rightly said, the writing the proposal, the grant is something. And when they look for a proposal, they look for the team. Actually, the team has to have interest covering. The team member should have interest covering the wide scope of the work. Actually, if you are writing, especially in the medtech field, you should have somebody in the medical technology field to support your program also. And then electronics engineers, then the field, the public health workers or something like that, the public health system specialists or something like that. Those kind of people, if you are there, you get a better chance to get the funding. And DST also has got a lot of support schemes, support systems in place for grants. In addition to that, the startup missions, various startup missions in various states, they have a lot of funds, and they are getting a lot of money from the Startup India system also to encourage these kind of startups. Like Nidhi schemes, Nidhi Prayas is a scheme which is run in almost all the incubation facilities through government support. They give a grant up to 10 lakhs to have a project. Even though we are a 5-year-old company, we recently got a Nidhi Prayas scheme to develop a new novel product actually for treatment of diseases. Because we are into this kind of domain and diagnosis, so we thought we will enter into the treatment domain using again biophotonics technologies to treat early stage cancers. This is a novel technique which we are trying to implement in the country now, using photodynamic therapy to treat early stage oral and cervical cancer. Yeah.
Okay. So a very interesting point you made about the team, and I will take this question to Aarti next. That team is very important when it comes to even either applying for government grants or even I would say executing whatever idea you have. But I think Aarti, your company has a very different definition of a team, which is not just a small team which is executing, but a team which is running on ground and with having 250,000 people
My God.
doing on requirement data collection and verifications. How do you manage that? How do you manage that at a large scale across 26 states in the country? How is that structure look like?
Okay, so the team is not built in a day, like Rome was not built in a day. It took us 5 years to build a team of that size. And I think one of the most important thing that has worked for us is definitely training and trust. So we do put a lot of efforts on training our digital runners. They go through a training program, they appear for assessments, and we keep on engaging with them, especially on the training front. We have a very strong quality check process. So we do multiple layers of quality check before our runner actually gets on field. And one thing which I have learned about rural India, which I keep repeating every time you ask me, is probably trust. That is one thing that is very important. So people there need to trust you. It's not like it doesn't happen in a day or two or in a month or two. You have to spend time. And within our support staff, our runners, like, they almost know all our support staff by their names. And our support staff also speaks to our runners and takes care of them like they own the runner. I mean, my support staff competes with each other to own the runner, that this is my runner, I will take care of him. So that is the kind of relationship that you have to build if you have to work in rural India. Obviously, you have to have your technology in place, you have to have your systems in place, because otherwise, obviously, you cannot manage that scale. But at the same time, training and trust and relationship is something that has worked for us for managing that team.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So, I completely agree. Trust plays a very big role when you start moving into rural India and interacting with people there. So I have actually coupled two questions for you. One is, what are so other than trust, what are some of the factors which you would say if a startup wants to get into rural sector, they should take care of in their team, in their processes, or whatever step they take? And at the same time, a connected questions, but more relevant to the current environment. You guys launched, I think, maybe one of the largest vaccination awareness program in rural India recently. So how has been that experience? Being able to build that trust across so many people, and then using that into more impactful work or in a very different area at the same time. So how has been that experience for you?
So it's an emotional question, Arihant, because Project Suraksha is closer to my heart. And it was actually a heartwarming experience for me also to see the impact of our network. And it was a culmination of the impact of our network as Project Suraksha, because it just took us kind of 1.5 months to reach 18 states. And our runners, when we said that we wanted to do a rural awareness program, our runners accepted it wholeheartedly. They came forward, they gave us feedback, and the feedbacks that we got were really worrisome. I mean, our runners would say that if we tell people for vaccination, they would like kind of abuse them. They will tell them that if you talk about vaccination, we'll just throw you out of the village. That was the level of hesitancy when we started. And initially, even some of our runners had that hesitancy. So we had to first train our runners to believe in that vaccination was actually a good process. So, so managing Swaraksha has given us a lot of internal satisfaction of being able to pull off something like that. And obviously it's tech driven, so you need to have your tech backend in place. And since our tech backend was in place, it did not take us time to just implement Swaraksha. We could just do it in a month's time. We could roll it across these states. In fact, we rolled it across these states in 10 days, but the acceptance got a little more time to happen. One of the biggest challenge was obviously vaccine hesitancy. And as I said, that in villages, you need to stay. So I'll tell you an example. There's a village called Balgara, which has got a population of around 1,200 people with around 550 people eligible for vaccination. So when we went there, almost 3 months ago is the first time when we went there, 2.5 months ago. So the villagers were, there was an AEFI with a senior citizen. So the first camp happened when only senior citizens were allowed. And then there was a casualty. We aren't sure, it's a hearsay because we couldn't locate who was the person who suffered, but maybe that was the reason. And it was a total, and the second camp, the vaccinator there, the authorities, they had kind of given up that they have tried everything. People are shutting doors on their faces. They just don't want to get vaccinated. 2.5 months, our runners kept going, meeting people, talking to them, identifying some weak links who could be easily convinced. And today there are only 80 people left in that village who need to get their first dose of vaccination. So that is the kind of time that you need to spend when you have to work in rural India. You just cannot fly away. You just cannot go away. You cannot make a visit and just, okay, I went to this village, this happened, and now I go to the next village. That is now how it works. Especially for anybody who wants to work in rural India, he needs to spend time with people there. Villagers are very good people. Once that trust is created, they'll not let my runners go without having food with them. But that trust has to build, and that trust building takes a little time. So anybody who is looking to work in a rural sector has to believe that it's a long tail business. It will not happen that in one year you will scale up to some big number like it happens with the other tech-based startups. That is not how rural India, I think, in India works. So that's my learning. And I missed your first question.
So this was this only that, other than trust, what are some of the factors which startups should consider? So one, you said like it is a long process. It's not like one short-term game.
Correct. Yeah, it's a long tail business. And I think second thing that they should understand is the needs of the people there. I think, for example, in financial products, I think there's a lot of innovation possible and a lot of tweaking possible to the needs of the people there. Like Dr. Subhash said, that if I have to make a device work in rural India, it has to be portable. It has to work on battery. Its electricity consumption has to be low. This is the infrastructure need, right? So if you are building something, you have to know that this is what my infrastructure says. So for example, our app, it has to work in offline mode. I cannot expect it to be connected to a network 24 hours, right? Electricity is, I have to take care of the power consumption. So my app cannot have a lot of power consumption because my runner's mobile will get discharged. So these are ground realities which when you work at rural level, these are like given. You have to know it's same. You need to know your geography. So if you know your geography, you build according to that.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. So some of the points, Aarti, I will take from you, and I will come, Vamsi, to you for this. As she said, we really need to adopt to what people are looking for there. And your area being technology-based solutions, how do you see in rural India the technology adoption happening right now? And to even have some of the solutions which we are talking about, or want to talk about in near future need a very wide range of adoption. So COVID situation really showed us that, some of the things can be adopted if we really want it, or if we really need it, but that's not the case every time for every solutions. So how does some of the digital solutions which we are talking about, they work in this system, and what are your views on the tech adoptions and digital adoption in rural India?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, first of all, for this opportunity. And, like Mr. Subhash and Aarti, they come from a strong tech background, with expertise into certain field. I'm more of a bottoms-up guy who, hardcore, on the ground rural experience. So, with supply chain experiences and all. So my entire view about this entire thing, in terms of how the scaling or technology adoption in rural is happening. By the way, our model is about, there are a lot of rural consumers who are sitting in villages who have their basic needs for which they are depending on a lot of things, like they have to go to a mandi, they have to go to a nearby bank or a marketplace or a district, taluk, block, whatever. So there are a lot of, dependencies, and there are like 85 crore people like that in rural India. And if you see what is the root cause for this entire thing, why they are not able to get their basic needs addressed in their own village, it's because businesses couldn't venture into that last mile village, because for the business their unit economics doesn't work out, because if in a village like 1,000 population, the cost of operation versus the revenues that they can generate doesn't match. So that is the reason why, in an urban, like how you and me can do a transaction in Zippy, I think in rural, because social and physical was always there. It's all about the digital, presence in the rural. And thanks to a lot of players, in fact, we have Aarti, and many more players who are venturing into rural, trying to bridge this divide and all. And everybody has taken their own path. So the way we are constructing this entire thing is, anything that a rural consumer would need has been aggregated into a one single platform. And we offer this to a village level influencer whom we call as Hey Sati. So that person is physically present in a village, who is kind of a tech savvy, who has a relationship and trust with the rural consumer, and who can influence people in terms of doing certain transactions. So we have embedded all the financial, banking, loan, insurance, agri input, output, FMCG into a one bundle as a platform offered to a village level influencer, so that he or she, depending on the person of the person we identify, because there are a lot of people who have their own influencing capacity. Like there is an women group member who can influence certain consumers. There are mom and pop stores who have an influence. There are progressive farmers, there are youth, truck drivers, retired people. So the idea is like how we can nurture micro entrepreneurship at a rural level so that they become an enablers for the businesses to venture into the last mile village. So the advantage is the consumer gets an advantage of buying the, getting his product or service need right at his comfort of the village, because hardly the Hey Sati is 50 meters or 100 meters away. While we doing this, what we do with the brands is like, it's a B2B2C model. In fact, we are coming up with a B2B2B2C model where some board discussion happens in a Mahindra. I think that has to be executed on the ground with the way the model we are creating. So that's how we are, entirely doing it. So the advantage the brand gets is the large network of these village level influencers who can, take their brand to the last mile. So coming to your typical question of, how this entire technology adoption and all these things happen. See, a lot of people again have this feeling that, rural, yes, there are a lot of challenges, but believe me, I think the kind of intellect that is there in rural, it is not there in urban. So, and there is enough intellect, available. All we need to do is rightly tap the intellect so that, things can be done. So answering your
statement, I like 200% agree.
Yeah, very true, Vansi.
Thank you for that. So what we are trying to do, again, I'll tell you a surprising thing. Like if you go to a village and see that there is only one Kirana store, can I tell you what is the logic behind this? In that village, there is only business for one Kirana store. Otherwise, second Kirana store would have come by the time. So that kind of an intellect is already there. What we are trying to do is we are enabling technology so that these village level influencers can use our technology platform so that they can ease the process of buying, selling for the rural consumers so that the brands get advantage, consumers get advantage. And in this process, these Hey Sathis, whom we call as influencers, get their decent livelihood so that they, rather than migrating to an urban place, they are sitting in a village place. So adoption in terms of technology, yes, if you go to a village of 1,000 population, all 1,000 may not be the smartphone users, but we are identifying those people who have relationship trust, who also can use smartphone, and so that they can offer to. I mean, the way we are building is for every 250 households, there should be a Hey Sathi. So that's how we are building it. Probably we are just started our process towards that. While we do that, I think with every year there is a good percentage of internet penetration or mobile penetration into the rural. There is a lot of acceptance. We are working on certain basic workflows so that if I am a farmer with an SMS, WhatsApp, and a call chatbot, he can raise an order or he can pay a bill. So we are working on some basic workflows. So definitely especially in last 2-3 years, there has been a significant progress in terms of technology adoption in the rural, with many people, many sectors actually identifying it. And see, we are kind of a marketplace. So it's like a multi-cuisine restaurant where tomorrow Dr. Subhash comes to me and say that I have this, med device, we will actually cater to that in the village. There is an FMCG company who comes, or a fintech company who comes. And so we are kind of a model where we are enabling that whatever technology being developed, we are actually becoming that last mile connect in the villages. And I mean, the adoption has been phenomenal now, and it's only to be growing now.
Yeah. No, that's completely true. That there is a lot of intellect which is already there in rural. It's just like they need the right push and the right solution to be there to help them adopt it very quickly. But I have like, after hearing you and Aarti, we are trying to build something considering what is already there. So, for example, when we say we are building app which consumes very low energy, right? Because the reason behind that is because the access to electricity sources is not that much, right? Somewhere that's the driver of that. So yes, we will build something which is already not there and builds our solutions around that. But what do you feel, what can some of the new startups can do to help solve the root cause of some of these issues? So which one of the area which we are trying to focus on is the energy. But energy, yes, is a big problem in many of the solutions which we want to implement. And at the same time, the apps can work offline, but we all know access to networks and access to internet in rural India is one of the challenging sector. So what some of the new startups and some of the new government schemes at the same time can help these things? Because I personally believe if we have those resources, we can really build much stronger solutions and products for them. So
yeah, so should I take it?
yeah.
Okay. See, again, as I said, what kind of solutions that can come in, especially in the last 1.5 years, what we are noticing is there are a lot of specific solutions into agri space, energy space, clean energy, fintech space that have come in. Again, for them, the big problem is to get into the last mile where, organizations like us will solve, or NXA will solve. But if you see the real challenges or the real solutions that are coming in, if you take the entire agri value chain, right from soil testing, there are like very good startups who have come into solving those problems. And in terms of getting a right loan to the farmer for their post harvest loan or for their agri inputs, there are a lot of players. When it comes to dairy, aquaculture, every place, in fact energy, we are working with certain 3-4 organizations where from husk they are making the energy someone, and then the green vehicles which can actually create a lot of that sustainability and energy related things into the rural. So there are many startups that are being developed, and now with a lot of support from the government schemes or incubators and accelerators like you, I think there are a lot of players coming in. I think the more players come into those segments, in fact we are actually solving the problem of their unit economics, because they can't get into a village and operate, so it becomes easy for our Hey Sathi to go and operate that. Yeah. So specifically when it comes to energy, I think there are very good segments. In fact, we already are working with 2 to 3 organizations who are into different solutions, offering in terms of energy and all, and many more solutions are coming in.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So, Dr. Subhash, somewhere connected to what we are talking about just before that, adoption is something very important for any problem and solutions we have. And you mentioned in your last answer that you are building a portable devices and making sure they are accessible and available in multiple villages at the same time. So, what has been your experience in terms of when it comes to, one is technology adoption, but at the same time, when it comes to health sector, many people are not even willing to go to doctors, and that's where the portable devices comes in handy, when these devices can go to them. But still, at the same time, what has been your experience of acceptance of the new age health devices into the rural area, and how does the work which you are doing affects the the person at the ground level there? So,
So
that,
basically,
yeah,
the problem we face is that, when you take the device to the rural areas,
yeah,
many people don't come for screening even. Just for checkups, they don't come. They think that they don't have any issues and they will manage it, especially for cervical cancer and oral cancer. In the oral cancer, some people may come for the screening, maybe pushed by their spouses or something. You go and do a checkup or something like that. These are people use the fan and other things. They have abnormal lesions. So we do the screening. We
yeah,
may identify some spot for biopsy and all, or some treatment to be done. When they're called for a follow-up, they don't appear also. This is the problem, this lack of awareness, lack of seriousness on the part of the people, that this can develop into a major disease for them, and which can affect their livelihood. That kind of feeling is not there. Only when they get into the severe stages that they cannot do their work, they cannot eat their food, then they rush to the hospital. By that time, especially diseases like cancer will be so difficult to manage, and there will be functional deficits and then mortality associated with the disease. This is something, this awareness creation is a major thing that needs to be done, especially for management of these kind of diseases in the rural sector. And we
yeah.
are doing some screening, collaborate with Murata, it's a Japanese company to screen in the villages of Assam, actually. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I can totally substantiate what Dr. Subhash has just said, because when we started Project Swaraksha, we gave oximeters to our runners, that if somebody is having a cough or a cold or a symptom like corona, at least measure his oxygen level.
Yeah.
People would not even come for that. It's
yeah.
like, please run this oximeter. So I think at rural level, the awareness is one of the biggest challenge. And the second thing that I think is also uh, upskilling the frontline health workers with technology. So at Swaraksha, we tried working with the ASHA workers because they were already there in the villages and they already knew the benefits. But it was very difficult even for us to get the ASHA workers to use a smartphone. Few of them are very savvy, they quickly use it. But for others, there's still a need of training. So if we have to mix health tech, we will probably need to do upskilling of the frontline health workers, make them as our runners or HESATHIs are tech savvy health workers is probably
So,
something that would be needed on ground.
yes, what you said, Aarti, is very true. Actually, we need at least little bit tech savvy, because our product also we want to give to the health worker. We haven't done it so far. We are relying on the doctors or para staff, paramedical staff to do it. But the health workers, if they can be trained, they can go to the rural pockets and do the screening and bring out good results. And when they, our device is such that it needs doesn't need internet connectivity
हेलो
also.
कपिल जी, मैं तनिष्क बोल रहा हूँ आरना एंटरप्राइज के पास। वो सर कुछ डिटेल प्रोडक्ट वगैरह।
Sorry, yeah, you can continue.
So, excuse me, So the thing is that even devices that doesn't need internet connectivity are there, but they can be cloud enabled. That is the principle we are using actually. Cloud enabled devices using machine learning algorithm, and the high tech things are happening. So to give a good diagnosis to the patient. So such devices, the health workers have to be trained to operate, and then they can send the data back to the doctors in the hospital for follow-up, and also in the connectivity when they go to the towns, nearby towns where the internet connection is there. So that kind of thing we are taking care of, but we are not sure, as Aarti said, whether the health workers will really be able to do this kind of screening, and whether we need to take the help of doctors or paramedical staff to do it. It's a major concern for us, actually.
Yeah. I believe Hanisha has just joined us. Mukesh, will you be able to bring her up?
Yeah, she's there. Yeah.
Yeah, let me see. Yeah, I can. So, hi, Anisha. Welcome. We
I'm so
started.
sorry. I'm so sorry. I had a prior commitment till 4:45.
Okay, no issue. So we we introduced you briefly that the work which you have done at various places and the kind of experience you have in last 14 years building some of the and helping running scalable businesses, including your work at World Food Program Innovative Accelerator at UN. So welcome to the discussion. We were discussing about how the rural markets have gone through a lot of requirements and the changes in last 1.5 year, and at the same time technology adoptions and the health product adoption is something which still continues to be a challenge there. So Anirudh, I would like to start and have a question for you that with your experience of building startups, impact and creating impact with them, how has been your experience of working in rural markets? So one of the things which Aarti has mentioned, that trust is something which is really important if you are working in rural market, and it's a long haul. It's not like in a short term success. So how has been your experience and your learnings about that?
Yeah, I have to agree with her wholeheartedly. I mean, it is about trust, especially because rural economies tend to be very close knit, and you're coming in as an outsider. So the first step that you have to take is gain that trust. Often, so this is a learning that I got from somebody really senior in the industry. They said when you enter a community, first you have to participate. First you have to be a participant, you have to be a humble participant often, and therefore a lot of, I mean, I come from a technology background, so I mean, because we do a lot of user related research, you're going in there and you're involving them in co-creating what would be useful for them. That participation angle is kind of taken care of, and then you have to stand at equal level, and then you can, I mean, at no point of time can we ever assume that because we come from a larger city we are in a position to prescribe. So it has to be co-created because they have lived in those situations for centuries. So they really know what's best for them. And I've seen this across multiple countries. My experience with rural situations in India may actually be relatively limited, but worked with startups across Asia, Southeast Asia, and Africa. So had the privilege of looking at, and this is true for nearly every country. They know the problems they have. They often even know the solutions that would be most useful, most frugal. But sometimes they're really smart people. But sometimes they just don't have the avenues available to them to be able to say, okay, have I repeated a point that was already mentioned before?
So we all agreed on the point that the people in rural areas are very much intellectually aware of what they need and how they need, but it's just like they need the right push. And yeah,
sometimes you just need to be the enabler, and you need to be the person that amplifies their voice, and they can get you there. I'll give you an example of a healthcare innovation that we piloted in sub-equatorial Africa, in a country called the Republic of the Congo. We were trying to build an app to measure malnutrition in children, and the healthcare workers were actually writing down height, weight, and MUAC in these large notebooks. So what we did is, okay, can we give them tablets where they can just enter the stuff? But there's no electricity there. There's often no network connection. So the nearest that we could come to was, okay, let them keep writing in their notebooks, and we'll establish a process by which they'll take a picture of the notebook once every week, like whatever number of pages have been filled in the last 7 days, and send it onward. And the AI at the server side just decodes that handwriting. So we, instead of having to write like a typical form or whatever, we had to decode the handwriting. Even then, we found that there were certain health workers who would just not fill up. So, I mean, we were fortunate enough to get an opportunity to go to the field. And we realized, the government had set up these huge solar, every village had one solar power installation. But as is the thing, the people knew best what they needed. Half of those solar panels were missing. They had figured out they needed something else. So the healthcare workers, the dedicated ones, used to take their phone. They used to this $30 phone. They used to guard it with their life, literally. They used to take it to the nearest village where there was a phone and an electricity connection and an internet connection. So phone and book in hand, they would go to another village, wait for an hour or so for the thing to charge, take a picture, upload it, and send it. So that's the kind of hardships sometimes they have to go through in order to get us the data or whatever that we need. So we have to be really mindful of that.
Yeah. So we completely agree with what you said. But you know, there's a very strong play which we expect government to play in building some of these basic infrastructure like access to energy, access to solar system, charging stations, and all. So you have worked closely with some of the government policies and UNDP. But most of the time we end up saying, the government policy didn't work or the implementation was not good. So what has been your experience with the government policies, and what kind of gap do you see in there?
So, I mean, you rightly said I have worked with the government, not for the government. Yeah. So it's not it's not for me to sort of comment on government policy really. Yeah. But yes, if you approach at the senior most level, the intent is very, very straightforward. I mean, of course, especially in a country like India, when we are talking about the need for, say, entrepreneurship or the need for, the benefits of entrepreneurship to trickle down to every level of society, the government recognizes this need. I mean, we simply do not have enough jobs being created. So, more people need to become entrepreneurs. I mean, I cannot really comment on policies in any other sphere other than entrepreneurship and, startups. So I'll just stick to that. So, I mean, from that perspective, from the macro perspective, yes, we need more entrepreneurs. We need more companies to exist so that there are more jobs. All of that is well understood and the intent is there. But often, so there definitely needs to be greater partnership with all kinds of players, because everybody brings in a different perspective. And often, if you're just sitting at a policy at a 30,000 foot level, you may miss some perspectives. So some of the policies, for example, will talk about, we'll talk about an accelerator getting a certain amount of funding and then cap the amount of funding that the accelerator can actually pass on to startups. We've seen that also. The point is that, yes, of course, you need some amount of money to exist, but if greater than 50% of the money that comes to an accelerator is available to the accelerator and not to the startups, it's kind of, sometimes it's it's not a pleasant situation.
Yeah, sure. So, so one of the things which you said, like, the partnerships and the adoption across states, and I will take that to Aarti. So Aarti, you have built your business across 26 states of the country over the period of time. But I'm sure you would have faced some differences in every state, either in terms of the way the government used to approach these kind of projects, the local community would approach. So how has been your experience of taking the same idea and the same thought process across different states and helping them understand that? So how has been your,
Yeah. So if you ask me how our runners behave across states, they behave the same. Only you have to speak in the local language. That is the only thing. But yes, in different states, at government level, there are obviously a lot of challenges. And as the size of the state increases, the challenges increase. So it is easier for us to work with, say, government of Nagaland, Meghalaya, or Assam, but it is difficult for us to work with government of UP or Rajasthan. The reason is the size of the state is high, their challenges are also different. So in certain states, we get a very good cooperation from the government. In certain states, there is always a hindrance. You have to kind of go to and fro and make that work. But to be very honest, except for the current vaccination drive, we haven't been working with government so closely, because most of our business is for businesses. So we work with private organizations. So our first, very close interaction with the government has only been through the project solution.
Okay. So Vamsi, to you, as we are seeing during the last 1.5 years, there has been a lot of technological adoption in various formats. And at the same time, there has been a lot of data collection which has happened. And people, what we believe is that yes, we can use that data to create a lot of solutions also, but there are many other formats and solutions available around the same. So how do you feel, and what's your view on how impactful we can make the solutions for rural India, which can be data driven and also like rely on the real impact data which we are able to generate?
Yeah. So coming to our experience, as we are into a multi-tier commerce model, doing buying and selling, because see, we are one of such platforms who do both buy and sell to the rural. It's not only that we are putting products, we also sell products. And the same Hesati to the same customer. In fact, the entire problem that we solve is the unviable unit economics being solved. So that means rather than consumer going to 10 different places, he comes to one Hesati. So that shows the kind of data that we are working on, because our Hesati has at least 7 to 8 touch points with the same consumer, because for his banking financial needs or agri needs or many needs, I think while we are dealing, that's where we have a lot of data points about the same consumer with us. So when it comes to in general question about like how we can build these solutions, technology solutions based on the data available, again, there have been very good organizations working on it. In fact, we are working with some agri-related organizations, dairy-related organizations who understand the data of the cattle or the dairy, and based on that suggest what feed should be given or what insurance or what has to be taken. So there are many solutions, and we are working with those kind of organizations. Like for example, we are working with Resha Mandi, which is a sericulture value chain, Aquacanet, which is into aquaculture, and many dairy organization based organizations. So there are a lot of players who are building solutions based on data that is being generated largely at the rural front. Our advantage is much at a bigger scale, where we know not only from the agri or the dairy or whatever, we understand both the end to end of a consumer in a village. So in fact, that becomes an opportunity for our Hesati to upsell and cross sell different services. So yeah.
No, it's completely true. The same person has being the touch point for multiple times really brings out some of the insights about the people. That's true. So Dr. Subhash, like what we were talking about and what Aarti also mentioned, there is a need and adoption which is happening every time, and the acceptance of various things in last 1.5 years has changed, and either it was vaccination or some of the basic health checks and all. So do you see that this trend can continue to so many other health services and facilities or health tech kind of solutions in coming days in rural India?
No, I believe that the health awareness, the requirement of health, of the people of the rural areas improved a lot, because with because the COVID, scenario, many people are aware that they have to keep good health, good hygiene, and all those things. Wear a mask. Mask has become a de facto standard now, so that to avoid diseases, getting diseased, they are used to these kind of things now. So I think that the incidence of infectious disease has come down in the rural areas because of the mask habits, not only the COVID protection. So if it is going to continue for long, it will benefit the rural population, and they will also try to keep good health by resorting to good healthcare practices. Overall, the health system would improve. That is my feeling, Yeah. And the challenges for startups in terms of COVID are many. Actually, the people are working from home and they are trying to evolve new strategies for management. Only problem which is affecting the startups for that matter is the hardware startups. So because they have supply chain issues and lack of infrastructure related issues also, and so due to the lockdown and other things, they are also getting affected. So otherwise, these kind of things in the rural sector, they are pretty good, and the solutions are available for many people to follow those kind of things, so that the overall health of the rural population is not impacted much. They have a better. I believe that it will improve over a period of time. With this kind of service in place.
Yeah, sure. So, Hanisha, a question for you. So you have been working with startups and some of the impact accelerator incubator programs for a long time now. But when we talk about building for Bharat or rural India, it's very different from building for urban markets and all. So what do you feel are some of the prerequisites for building for rural and specifically for sectors like energy and health, which needs a lot of investment into R&D area and development of products and these things. So what will be some of the things which startups should prepare for?
So, I mean, these are two areas in which I seriously hope, I mean, we build an ecosystem quite like in Europe, where there is some amount of research coming out of universities that startups can, from the get-go, commercialize, for that matter. That would really solve solve a lot of teething troubles for startups. But in the absence of that, for the current, if you're talking about now, there's definitely some amount of grant funding that could help startups get off the ground early on. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation does a lot around, especially around vaccine usage, around WASH. So if there is a variant of that, so we had mentored startups that were in the areas of child mortality, child nutrition. So those also end up getting a lot of adoption at the village level. So perhaps the first point is to pick the battle that could be won slightly easily, and then go on to the tougher parts. So if we say that we want to educate the rural population on the benefits of eating healthier, or about because there are these news stories about how parents who are working all the while may not be, I mean, semi-rural or semi-urban populations, children having obesity because of not eating healthy because parents don't have the time. Can we start somewhere there, as opposed to looking at for grown-ups? Pretty much everybody will do what it takes to keep their child healthy. We may not be able to solve the so pick the right problem first off. I mean, of course, the large problem set is there, but also where the grant funding is slightly more forthcoming, and see if there is technology from elsewhere that can be utilized to jumpstart a little bit. Yes, I know as innovators, we really want to start from scratch, but sometimes just getting that foot in the door with the first piece can help us build something first. Use the profits from that to go and do the big thing that we want to achieve later on. Baby steps.
Yeah. No, so I agree. Like having a foot in the door always helps it, because that can help you build further from there, and at least gives us little bit sustainability duration for you to prepare something new.
Yeah. So one of the tools that we funded is called Child Growth Monitor. They're a team that's like two people are sitting in Berlin, and pretty much all they do is fundraise. So they're fundraising from they're fundraising from Microsoft AI in the US. They're fundraising from the UK. They're fundraising from everywhere else. So I mean, they've been able to build that kind of a runway. Half of their development team is sitting in Bombay. The tool is being tested in slums in Bombay. It's basically an Android app. The child stands in front of it and just turns around, and its height, weight, and NUAC is measured. Sorry, I keep talking about nutrition because World Food Program, our mandate was MAM, moderate and acute malnutrition. So I don't have too much experience in the other kinds of diseases.
Yeah. No, so you said very good point, and Subhash, I would like your views on that. That funding from the beginning till you become a very successful startup is really important. And you also said in the beginning that you started pitching in some of the competitions, you reached out to incubators for seed fund, and you use government grants. So how do you feel for startups, new startups now, because there are a lot of startups coming in now, and at the same time there are a lot of grants available. How this process can look like? Is it easier? Is it difficult? What are some of the things they should know before they start raising funds?
My feeling is it's not so difficult to get funded now, but opportunities are many. And so if you have a viable proposal, first thing is that you should have a solid proposal, which is catering to an unmet need, So especially in biotech or medical sector, you have to, even if you are specialist in one field, you have to interact with the hospital chain or maybe other domain experts to see there's a real need for that. And again, you have to think for the marketing strategy also to evolve. What kind of marketing strategy can sell the product to the consumer or to the B2B product in the hospitals or something like that? So strategy should be in place also. Then you can have to think of some innovative ideas which are novel ideas. Then only you should go for this kind of developing a POC, proof of concept. And then with that kind of thing, if you go, you will be able to raise funds. If you're going with some vague ideas, you will find it extremely difficult. You should think till the end, how to the marketing aspect also, that this is going to be a viable product. And there's a market which is looking for this kind of product. That is very important when you look for things. And especially for medtech field, you should have a patentable idea also. The idea you develop should not be just a copy of something else, So if you have something which has the potential for patenting, something novelty about it, then you will certainly get fund. There is no question about that. That is my feeling.
If I may add one thing, Arun,
Yeah.
sorry, I
I
missed
want
that
to add
one.
a point
Yeah.
here to what so Dr. Subhash has said and others. See, when it comes to when you are with an idea, that is going to work, and getting into a funding, because I'm presuming that a lot of youngsters will be seeing this session. So for them, see, the thing is, obviously, when you are at a very idea stage on the paper, before even it gets into the paper, whatever other works you need to do, if you are a device or a product, you have a product, physical product, I think before that, I think it's all about you individually and friends and families. But believe me, now there are a lot of grants available. I can't comment much on healthcare because I've not worked on many things, but we working in agri segment, especially, there are many grants available from NAM, NABARD, and a lot of initiatives. Even a lot of incubator programs are there. A lot of state governments are offering. A lot of startup, competitions are happening. So I think there is a lot of, funds available, provided you have a right idea, and if you can convert that idea into minimum viable product. But again, I agree with Dr. Subhash's ideas. I think fundraising is a dedicated work. I think it has to be a continuous process where one of your team, I already started. Aarti smiling now, so I can understand. So somebody has to dedicatedly do that exercise throughout. So
Correct.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you, Vamsi. Opportunities are plenty, actually. You have to tap the right sources for the right kind of product in mind. Suppose you have an agri product, there will be some opportunities specifically for that. MedTech also, there are opportunities.
Yeah.
You can raise funds, And again, as I told before, the team is also critical. If you should have the right team to do the job.
Yeah.
I also agree with your point of this proposal writing, because there are certain schemes, certain grants, and all. Again, it depends on a lot of industry expertise. So it's added to team, added to your funds available. I think the best thing that anyone can get is to have a right mentor, and that's where I feel that all programs like these will help us, because believe me, I think you can only reach to a certain position if you have the right mentors and advisors in place who can really guide you in terms of what you're doing right, but what you may do wrong, that may again negatively impact your entire journey process.
Yeah, what you said is very true. And Manisha also told about especially the Melinda Gates project and all. To write a proposal to that level, you need a lot of hard work actually to pen a proposal. Melinda Gates or from other welcome grants or something like that. Millennium Alliance projects are there. Those are very good grants to have, but it's a tough proposition to write unless you have good team who can do that, or good collaborators. You need a collaborator for that kind of work also. Nice collaborators to work with you, nice NGOs to work with you. Then you combinedly write a project and stop it. And sometimes you may get rejected, but don't get disheartened. You have to keep trying. Next time you try again, and until you get it, you have to be focused on that. A team should be there to get the funds.
And
On
hardware products, I want, if there are young entrepreneurs who are wanting to make a hardware product, I would want them to learn from my mistake. So as Arihan said, I'm a biometric professional, and I hold a patent in vein recognition technology. But there is a journey between technology and product, which we miscalculated when we made vein recognition. So yes, we built the technology, we had a patent, but making technology into product that is reliable, that runs on the field in user conditions, is a different game altogether. So if you are building a technology, you need to understand that you have, having done the technology, there is 70% way still left to make it into a product that runs on ground. So prepare for that product. Most of the time as innovators, once the technology is built, we feel that we have run the race, we have done, we have arrived. But that's not true. There's a long journey to be completed.
Anisha, you were trying to say something on the investment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another source of funds could possibly be, can the same innovation be also applicable to urban or semi-urban populations? If you can look at varying price points or even different kinds of buyers for those. So is it possible that the urban customer is paying by themselves for it and the rural customer is subsidized or completely subsidized by a government, by a CSR grant, something like that? Eventually, as an organization, your first responsibility is to your customer, but that means that you have to stay in existence long enough to serve them. So like Dr. Subhash said, one person has to pretty much keep an eye on that. Do we have enough money to exist at all times? So if that means that some subset of the organization is selling to a richer customer than you would ideally have wanted to, it's not a terrible sort of,
Yeah. So some of the ideas we have worked with, and same point came in our previous panel discussion, was the same, that if you have something which can work in urban market also, you need the right adoption techniques to bring that into a rural market also. So that also works vice versa, that if you have build something for rural markets, you need some adoption technologies for the or ways for the urban market. So yes, that can also work as a funding source, that you have some paying customers and some customers you want to work on for the period of time. Great. So one last question to everyone, and I would like one point from all of you. We have covered, I think, a lot of points, but let's say if you have to summarize all of them in one point, what is something you will tell to a new startup who want to go into rural India and build something for a long-term solution? So starting from Subhash, what would you suggest them to do? One point from all of you.
Look for something what they really need and have a solution which is affordable to the rural population, and have a plan to reach them and the right price point also.
Yeah. Vamsi.
Yeah, I think I can't agree more to what he has said. I think they'll identify the right need and go. But I think in general, I will tell. I think if any new entrepreneur, I think don't fear to fail, but fear fast, so that you can learn mistakes. Yeah. And if we are having a product, I think you can reach out to HESA so that we can help you to.
Yeah.
That's what a marketing guy does. I'm going to learn that from Vamsi.
Selling point.
Yeah.
No, I'm not selling. I'm helping.
I know that.
Aarti, what would you suggest?
So what I said earlier, if you are going into a rural market, it's a long haul. Have patience. Don't compare yourself with a startup that is working in urban and gaining whatever are their numbers in 3 months or 6 months. Your numbers will come, but they will take a little time.
Perfect.
Anisha, from you. Yeah.
Sounds like everybody has covered all my points, but I think I'll say something which is a variation of what Dr. Subhash mentioned. One, yes, build what they need, but sometimes be a good enough salesman to be able to sell it before you actually need to build it. The lean startup principles. Pretty much, can you get buy-in from the user before having sunk in any kind of cost in actually building the thing? If you can, like, it works somewhat for urban users, so it's worth a shot. Second, in terms of not charging a lot can be different in very, very different circumstances. So we funded a startup out of Bombay that uses satellite information to help fishermen find fish in the sea. Now, when the founder wanted to price it at 500 rupees per subscription, a SaaS tool for fishermen, underprivileged fishermen, at 500 rupees a month. And pretty much everybody we met a major telco. We met major telcos in 2 countries actually. And everybody said nobody is going to pay 500 rupees. Rural SaaS not happening. But eventually, 1 year later, we do have 1,500 paying subscribers, because the fisherman is saving 15% on fuel. They're getting an ROI of 7x on the. So you do have to maintain value and not price. even for that customer. You do have to realize everybody is a customer. I mean, anybody and everybody buys soap, buys recharges. So if they're customer, if they can be customers for Unilever and Airtel, both very large publicly listed companies, they can be customers. So you do have to have that belief in yourself.
Yeah, have the right value for everyone. Great, great. Thank you everyone for your time and patience to answer all my questions. So over to Taha now.
Thank you, Arihant, for such good moderation of the entire discussion itself. It was so good to understand, about the rural India, what the opportunities over there, and also the work that we are seeing all of you founders actually spending their time working and solving on it. So first of all, thank you all the audience for coming in. I think this was a great session where we keep hearing and talking about startups. And the unicorns and things, but for us also it's very important to talk about the impact, especially in the rural India, that's going on. And the entire rice challenge and this entire program that we have been doing has been really much focused around that. And getting all of you speakers over here involved, engaged, and sharing your such good experiences has been super fabulous. And to start with, Subha, with the amount of experience that you're coming in, almost 5 decades of experience that you focus a lot around innovation and research, and how we have worked with the governments and the grants, and being able to leverage that to be able to patiently and perseveringly, building your startup has been very, very motivating. You also very rightly mentioned about the need of technology at the ground, right? You need to understand what you're building, have them to be compatible, portable, and adaptive, especially when you're looking at the rural segment, because that's where when we make something in a lab versus when we bring that thing into the market, especially in the rural area, we get to understand what are the constraints and issues that we'll be working on. So being able to understand that part is very, very important. Aarti, it's always good to have you. I've spoke with both Govind a lot. I've been really, really, really amazed by work that NXZ has been doing. The digital runners and the amount of impact that they have been bringing in has been super fabulous. Being able to connect to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 itself, where most people don't have reach, and you guys have been very successfully getting there, helping reach out and getting that impact with 2.5 lakhs plus runners has been super impressive. And the point that you brought about the ground realities, about building that relations where everyone, like especially in the rural India, relations matter a lot. And being able to connect those dots even at the village level and understanding the need of the hour is very, very important. Technology, of course, the adoption and the apps and things will keep coming in. But being able to work smoothly even in the offline mode as well as with technology is very important. And they also good to understand how warmly you have been able to get responses from the villages and the rural people, and the support that you have given them has created an impact, right? And I think lastly, very rightly, you also mentioned about the awareness being the biggest challenge, and that awareness being able to grow in the rural region is something very, very important. And then coming over to Vamsi, and the work that you guys have been doing with HESA has been super fabulous itself, right? Talking about innovation, invention, execution of technologies itself, what you are building for the solution that you have been building for the rural areas, understanding the requirements, understanding what is really need to be needed is very important before even we go about building it, right? You need to also differentiate between what you are building for an urban market versus a rural market, right? It's very easy where we have folks around us which we engage with and get feedback in the urban environment, but really being able to go down there, go spend time in the villages, understand the audience that you're working for, understand their intellect, understand at what level you need to communicate becomes very important. I think that's both what you and Aarti also have done, and that's also, I feel personally, has been one of the key reasons for success, to be able to actually go down there and create that impact itself. And I feel that, for any startups that we have in this group, looking to build for rural India, being able to spend that time understanding with your market even before you go about building your product, right? We talk about customer research being important, market research being important, but normal circumstances, we do a survey, we do a questionnaire, we do calls, but that will never work in this market, right? For you to understand your market, you got to be there, live there, see that and feel that, because a lot of the communication that is going to happen is going to be emotional, right? It's going to be, getting to understand them and then understanding their problem, and then bringing out what they can help, right? If we just go and say, hey, you know what, we have this thing, it's going to change your life, we're not going to see responses over there. Seeing how you guys have done that so fabulously, and I think that really brings that core basics and the building blocks of the venture that you have created. And I think to any venture that we see, that is the most important part that we need to ensure that we have. And then finally, Hanisha, having you over here has been, again, super awesome. We have been talking a lot about the impact that you have, working with so different organizations, startups and multinationals, even with UN, working on programs, understanding the challenges. I think the reason I feel startups have a great opportunity over here is because with multinationals, a program that was supposed to take, 6 months turns out to be 2-3 years. But as startups, when we are focused on getting it out there, we figure out the ways out. We are not, it's not a salary base that, I've ticked the marks, I went there, didn't get back, right? If someone says no, you have to get there and figure something out on the feet and solve for that one. And I feel that's going to be a very strong statement, or the one of the very strong wins that we see for rural India startups, right? When you're building up, if you're able to bring in and create that impact, there are a lot of multinational, there's a lot of societies and organizations who really want to support grassroots level impact initiatives and ventures. And for them, it is going to be the hard work that you're going to put in and the base that you're going to create a differentiating factor between going with you versus any other multinational itself. Because what we see now is that, the startups, like how we see Aarti and Ramsey, folks, having that grit, being there, getting there, even if every other advisor says, no, it's not useful, it's, you're building for the wrong people. But if you have that, passion and then perseverance and that insight, you're able to build that. I think the last example that Hinja talked about, that even in rural India, people can pay. It is just that the impact, the value that they are getting has to be justifiable. It's not, we can't think of, hey, rural India will never be able to pay 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees. They do pay, they do have geo connection, they do have a phone now, right? And people are finding out ways, but people really want to grow. We see, their hunger, they want to. I think it's just that the information gap is obviously reducing with the technology adoption increasing over there. But at the same time, we feel that this group of founders that we have together over here will play a very important role in figuring the hustles and the new innovative ways of making those communications happen, making those engagements happen, which will then create that impact for us. So, I think for us, a lot to learn. It was so awesome to have all of you over here talking so much about, the work that you have done and the basics, which I think is a fundamental to being able to be successful in this space itself. Just want to thank all of you to take up this time. I know it's a crazy time going on, but you being able to take out this an hour and a half to come interact with founders, share your knowledge. I think this is something that really helps enable the next gen of innovators and entrepreneurs. Because I think for the folks who have done it, when they come and then talk about it, that's the most impactful part. So any last comments from anyone?
Yeah, I would like to add one point. Other than a lot of things that drive, I think the most important thing that drives, especially when we are into this is the rural market, is because I always believe that any impact has to be at a scale, and any scale you will not see in like how bad things you see in a year like COVID. Any large good things you can see only after a decade. So the profound impact that the rural models can create, I think the way it can improve the socio-economic things at a rural, I think it's going to be phenomenal. And now I'm very confident that in a decade's time, India will see a very large socio-economical changes in the rural.
No, I
totally agree with Vamsi. And that's one line that I always say, as you bring more opportunities, it will create an inclusive economic growth of rural India. And that is what all those people working in rural will
Yes.
need.
So I have one point to add, Taha, you mentioned about passion for the founder, if you have the passion, you can achieve anything actually. If you have the passion to achieve the goal, you will do it. You will find ways to solve the issues and come up successful. That is the thing. Passion is the most important desirable quality for an entrepreneur to be successful.
No, I totally agree. And I think, like, to be really honest, right, if you are building for rural India, you've got to have a passion for that, because the type of challenges that you see in solving for rural India is very different, right? And unless you have the passion for the people over there, unless you go and live there sometime and live with them, right, you will not really truly understand if it's that for you. And whatever we do, right, I think there are just so many problems out there that needs to be solved, that as entrepreneurs are opportunities. But why do you select what you're selecting and going with that, right? Being clear about that is very, very important. This is why I agree with you. Like, I think making sure you understand your passion, understand what really drives you, and then following that. I think there are amazing things that the world needs, and the amazing things that entrepreneurs can do over here.
Yeah, after Subhash said about passion, Aarti said about, I would say patience, and the final thing is persistence. So if you have all these three P's, so because I mean,
one more thing is needed: perseverance. Perseverance. No, perseverance is what is needed also. Perseverance. If you have the perseverance, you just go after it. Passionately and perseverance.
I can talk about it from the funding side. A passionate entrepreneur stands out even in their applications. When we are receiving applications, I mean, there was a time where I was receiving 900 applications a month. But the passionate, like utterly sort of driven entrepreneur stands out, really. I'll give you an example. One of the founders that we were, like, they had something which was relatively similar to others. But that founder went and spoke to 70 different country heads in my organization. After having sent the application to us, they went and spoke to 70. We only operate in 90 countries. And how did they do it? They literally went. So in terms of population, inverse order of population, they went to the largest population to the smallest and went and spoke to 70 different people and got a buy-in from somebody saying, "Oh, we need this solution." So if you're relentless, it will stand out.
Agree. I think totally agree on that. I think I've seen so many folks being able to leverage this as a life motto itself. That no's are there, but even if there are no's but you're still passionate about doing it, you're perseverant about getting there, you will figure out a way. It is not just believing, but of course that action on the ground supporting that passion is really important to be there. So I think we'll love to end on this note. I think this has been such an amazing session itself in a very positive way, with all these smiling faces over here. One last request. I think it's time for a good selfie before we go up. So would request all the attendees to open their cameras and just have a quick photograph for the group. I think a memorable.
While the attendees are starting their camera, I would like to thank Arihant. He has been an absolutely good moderator. The kind of questions he asked, they were amazing. So thank you, Arihant.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.